Angela Yuriko Smith is a third-generation Shumanchu American and award-winning poet, author, and publisher with more than 20 years of experience as a professional writer in nonfiction. She's a publisher of Space and Time magazine, established 1966, a two-time Bram Stoker Awards winner, and HWA Mentor of the Year for 2020. Angela, over to you.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me here. It's a huge honor to be able to read to you all. I am going to be reading from poetry, Tortured Willows, which was a Bram Stoker winner, and second place, Elgin. Just recently I found that out, so we're all very excited. I wrote this book with Lee Murray, Christina Singh, and Genevieve Flynn. But I'm going to start at the beginning with a poem called Four Willows Bound. And hopefully I can read. My eyes seem to be not so cooperative lately. But Four Willows Bound was written for the four of us that were writing this poetry book. I wanted a poem to kind of tie all of our different works together and what we were trying to say. And so this is that poem. Four willows bound. Four willows stood bound, rooted to the shore, watching, unquiet, waiting. Individual, different species, unique breeds, but all were willows. The storms came with wind and lashing rain that stripped all, every lovely leaf. Silenced, their voices no longer sang in the breeze. And then came people. They stripped away more, taking bundles of branches, leaving behind trunks they couldn't budge, roots too deep to pull. Left alone and too bare to weep, the willows remained. Around them dropped twigs too small to be of value. Unnoticed, they grew, taking root beside mothers, with little to give. But it was enough. Four willows became a grove in numbers, came strength. When the storms returned, the wind could only scatter the smallest of twigs. Four willows stood bound in their sisterhood, in strength, unquiet, waiting. And this book is a lot about generational situations, let's say from growing up with Asian mothers and that have immigrated and all of the issues with that. And so that was us, each of us are kind of dealing with those issues on our own, from our own personal cultures. So this one is Onorigami, which is in Okinawa, which is where the Shumanchu people are native. Onorigami is, they believe that the women hold the spiritual power. And still to this day, there's very active women. They're called Yura and Nori. And I'm sorry, that's seaweed. Noru. And they are the goddesses, like they handle the goddesses in more of the higher realm, the celestial realms. And the Yura are kind of like the day-to-day mediums that handle the little things. Like, there's my dead grandfather's bugging me and making all my stuff burn. So, that's where the Yura would come in and help with that. But Onorigami is the practice of women holding the spiritual power. She spoke with the dead, appeased them with offerings, sat in for the gods. She could tell fortunes, her tattooed hands, hajichi, talismans on skin, marks of pride magic. She negotiated with the angry yokai, Yura and Noru, the Luchuan, Kamanchu, working in tandem. Forbidden or not, they listened to the kami, not a government. Treasures of Yuku, those who bring life, bring balance, appease the demons. Onorigami, a vintage feminism. The world needs her back. And I do believe that we need to pay a little more attention to our women. So this is a very good forum for that and recognize that we do have a lot of spiritual power. This one is called Her Hajichi. And I'm not native. I'm a third generation Shumanchu, so I always feel very self-conscious that I'm mispronouncing all of these words. So I apologize to my ancestors if I'm butchering this. Hajichi are tattoos that women used to wear in Okinawa on the back of their hands. And they were the most important thing a woman could have. They were unfortunately banned by imperialistic Japan, kind of as a mark of nativism. So women don't wear them for the last two generations, but these generations were starting to reclaim these. So that is on my list of things I want to do, is get my own hajichi. But they developed as you grew up. You began them when you were very small, and then they got bigger and had more details added as you had things happen, like you had family, you had children, you got married, you weren't married anymore. Anything like that went into your hajichi, and they were very personal. And kind of a saying that I read was, or something that I read was, children leave you, a husband can die and leave you, but your hajichi stay with you until the end. So, and my grandmother had them, and I have this precious photo of her with them. Typically, hajichi women, or when they were oppressed or whatever, and it was like bad, and you weren't supposed to have them, the women would always take their photos with their hands down so you couldn't see them. But I'm super proud that my grandmother had her hands up, and I was told that she was always like, nope, these are precious to me, and they're still precious to me, despite what somebody else thinks. So that's what hajichi are. And now I can actually read the poem. An arrow, an X, a permanent mark of pride and of her culture. Uchinanchu girls with their decorated hands, an arrow to show where she was headed, equal and independent. Tattoos that she chose. A spider, a cross, a needle made of bamboo, a story on skin. They showed their power, and wherever she may go, they showed where she'd been. Hajichi, tattoos on my great-grandmother's hands, marked with pride, for pride, and then banished by the men of Japan who feared onarigami. The ink may be gone, but the spirit remains strong and calls for returns. And that was one of the things that I thought was the coolest about the hajichi, is women were always equal in Shimanshu culture. It was always egalitarian. They were just recognized as different jobs, different powers, but we need each other for balance. And so when women would get stolen by pirates and whatnot, the people who do want to steal women, the merchant men, when they would go around and they would see a woman with the hajichi, they would steal her, they would help her escape, they would buy her, whatever they had to do to return her back to her home. So I just thought that was super cool. So kind of like air tags back, through 100 years ago. So this one is called, I'm just sorry, I'm checking my time, Kijimuna. And that is a little, kind of like an elf or a fairy. They have brown skin and crazy red dreads. And when I was a little girl, I used to see them all the time. And I mentioned it to my mom, and my mom was like, well, don't talk to them. So I'm always fascinated by these and why they visited us in America. And this will be my last poem because I am running out of time. But this is Kijimuna. I used to see them before I was old enough to go to school. Children just my size that no one else seemed to see, peeking around doors, beckoning to me. I loved their hair like fire, so as bright as their smiles. Playmates, secret friends, all chased away by grown-ups, not understanding. Or perhaps they did know the Kijimuna and the wood sprite mischief. Perhaps it was me that couldn't see the danger in that toothy grin. And I will stop there, and I thank you very, very much for having me here to read Tortured Willows.